little excursion this evening. And a very mild, if not warm, evening it is too. Skies are forecasted to become partially clear, but it's very humid, and at the moment it's 20 degrees centigrade as I drive along here. I know exactly where I'm heading to tonight. Somewhere that's very new and very different. Well, the old charabang has got me here at Besthorpe gravel pits at the side of the River Trent. First time that I've trapped here. Dillis and I used to come here occasionally looking for insects, but this is the first time that I've come here trapping moths. It's a place that I've always wanted to come and try, and although we're now on the 2nd of September, might be getting a bit late in the year for the best of this particular site, but I'm hoping for some sort of wetland species, maybe one or two of the rarer wainscots. That's what I'm hoping for anyway. It'll just be nice to get an indication of what's here in early September. Well, we have liftoff. Be interesting to see just what turns up. We know it's a poor year. It's a poor year throughout the country for moths. But it'd be nice to catch a few micros. Besthorpe's been well covered over the years. I'll probably talk a bit more about that as we go through the session. But it's been unrecorded, largely unrecorded, for its micro moths. So, September the 2nd, we're off and running here at Besthorpe gravel pits. Well, here's the general scene. I can tell you now that the sheet is already full of flies, mostly midges, non-biting midges though, but we do have one or two moths already in. A few spots of rain at the moment, but you can see that clearance low in the western sky from here, but very nice. There's a light breeze and perfect conditions. Now, first moth of note is this brown spot pinion. Didn't quite expect to see one of these just yet. We are only on the 2nd of September, but this moth will be flying across the UK over the next month or so. I occasionally get the species in my garden, and that's well and truly an urban area, so you can expect it in urban sites, but more so at suburban sites, and even more so at rural locations, especially woodlands. This one's actually a female, so was obviously just flying past and couldn't resist the attraction of my MV light. So a nice one to set us off for this evening here at Besthorpe with brown spot pinion. Well, from the half an hour that I've had here at Besthorpe, I'm impressed. It's always nice when you get lots of insects, not just moths, coming to the sheet. I think it does me anyway, I think it tends to fill you with more anticipation rather than an insectless or dipterusless, if that's such a word, sheet. And quite often, if there's no flies flying, or very few, then there's very few moths, and that's certainly a case in early spring or autumn. But here we're doing well. A couple of Chinese characters in, centre-barred sallow, copper underwing, dark-barred twin spot carpet, one of the longest names you can write in your notebook. Nothing unusual as yet, but it's just ideal conditions. I've picked my choice of night to come here well, and so far the hornet catch cup is empty. I must admit it's one of the reasons why I decided to try here than a potential woodland site. I wanted a hornet-free evening. Now, here's not the most exciting of moths, I think you'll all agree. This is quite a drab affair, to be honest, but it's that drabness and rather plainness that makes Vines Rustic quite easy to identify. You'll know Vines Rustic when you see one. It's a greyish, sort of sandy brown, light sandy brown coloured moth, and the only discernible marks on Vines Rustic really are some weak cross lines and dotted lines across the wings, and both kidney and oval shaped marks on each of the forewings. The hind wings are quite wide as well and distinctive, and it's not a large noctuid species. It's pretty much the size of flame shoulder, and this one's about to go off. It's took me 3-4 attempts to get this. So this is Vines Rustic, and a moth that has increased in recent years in Nottinghamshire. At one time was quite a rarity, but now is a regular species. Well, here's a beauty of a moth. I will probably have to put photos in because it's not playing and it doesn't want to rest on the sheet, which some moths don't. Some moths never want to settle on a flat sheet. They prefer something more vertical and more upright. But the moth in here is a bordered beauty, so photograph time, it is what I would term an absolute stonker. If you're quite new to moth trapping, you're not seeing one of these, when you first see one, it'll probably take away your breath. It is an absolutely stunningly beautiful moth. I've always had a thing for these. It's not just green moths that I have a thing for, but bordered beauties. I remember my first one of two, if I remember right, at Eakring, and I found it dead on the road. And then eventually Dillis and I did catch one, I think at Lound Wood. But it's an absolute beauty of a moth. I've had this once at home, if I remember right, but as you can see from the photograph, it is a stunner. If it decides to play, then I'll try and film it, but for now, pot shot it is. First of the large yellow underwings are now wafting around as they do. Huge brutes of moths, large yellow underwings. But it's nice to see a busy sheet, and I'm very surprised at the number of moths that I've got actually at the moment. We haven't got through the first hour yet, and we're well over 10 Brimstones, but good numbers of moths, and we're soon going to be on 30 species. I thought it would be quite slow. Despite the good conditions tonight, I wasn't expecting this amount of activity. So that's nice to see. I like this site. I like it a lot. May well be that I'm tending to like it because there's lots of moths coming in, lots of moths on the sheet. In fact, there's 17 Brimstones on the sheet and just surrounding the sheet on the gate and in the grass, and more Brimstones coming in. Large yellow underwings are also starting to come in now. There is a lot happening here, and it's a site that has been well recorded over the years. The county recorder has spent many hours and nights recording the moths here at Besthorpe. I'm hoping to add a few more micro moths to Besthorpe's list. It has such potential, and it's not very often that I've trapped near any areas of wetland, but this has so much promise. There's such good habitat here, lots of wetland habitat, of course, being next to the Trent, and numerous gravel pits, but there's also a large area of meadowland, and there's numerous hedgerows and trees. It's pretty much got everything a moth trapper could wish for, including lots of moths, even at this date in September. Don't know how well it'll show up on the camera, But this is what it's all about. Lots of moths, and colourful moths as well. Still, well, ever increasing numbers of brimstones. Just to the left of the sheet, there's 2, 4, 6, 7, 9, 10, just to the left of the light, and then there are more, over 20. Brilliant numbers of brimstone moths. They've certainly had a good second part of the year, and the numbers of large yellow wanderings, which I've already mentioned, they are increasing as this evening goes on. This is going to be a really interesting and profitable session. It would be nice to come out of this with perhaps a species that I've never recorded before. Early days, but lots of insects and lots of moths. It's a very colourful picture. This is probably the most colourful sheet I've ever had, and without a doubt I've never had brimstones in the numbers that I've got here. Ever increasing, they're just coming in all the time, and it's fabulous to see. I know it's a common moth and most people want to see rare moths, but it's just nice to see good numbers of a common species, and they don't come a great deal commoner than brimstones. And in all the years that I've been trapping, which is well over 20 years of moth trapping, I've never had brimstones in this number at all, nowhere near. On the sheet now there are well over 20, and they just keep coming in. Good numbers of centre barred sallow as well, and large yellow underwings. Nothing much out of the ordinary at the moment, but for me, aside from maybe bordered beauty, it's the numbers of a common moth, one of our commonest moths, that's the most pleasing thing. Now here's something of a surprise. This is a purple bar, a quite smallish Geometridae moth, and this is one that Dillis and I used to catch regular in the Sherwood Forest area. I have had this at home, I believe, but away from the Sherwood Forest area, I'm not entirely sure on its Nottinghamshire status. I don't think it's particularly common elsewhere. So a nice surprise, this one. All of a sudden, here it was, just sat at the side of the light and doing well to avoid the mass of large yellow underwings and brimstones which are coming in. So a nice one to have. Purple bar, not an everyday moth in Nottinghamshire. You may well get this in your suburban garden, but in Nottinghamshire this is a good species on any garden list. It's not very often we've seen the sheet like this in 2024. Lots of colourful moths. I've never ever seen brimstones in the number. I know I've already mentioned it, but fabulous to see, really is. The sheet is pretty much all yellow, orange and green. Green represented by green carpets, and there's a couple of light emeralds knocking about, but brimstone's the moth for me. Well, I think time for a little bit of an update of what's come in. Well, the main update is we've just had a shower of rain, lasted about 10 minutes or so. Nothing. I ended up packing a lot of the stuff away, and I've brought that back out now, but the sheet and the generator and everything, the electrics have been fine. But there are over 50 brimstones now on the sheet. It's quite incredible. But of moths and species that have come in, the burnished brass has just appeared. There are 2 gold spots, one of which appeared out of nowhere and looked as though it had been sat on the sheet for about 3 weeks, to be honest. Amazing how that happens, how you don't always see moths come in. Lime speck pug is also new in, and rosy rustic too. And there's a peach blossom which I need to remember to write down, but plenty of moths on the sheet. This is a really good session. The unfortunate thing about it is that this is the last probably of the warm and humid nights that we have here. It's going to turn a little bit fresher, so it may well be a few nights or so before we get out trapping again, and that's one of the reasons why I have made the effort to come out here this evening, because conditions were just perfect. So we'll see what else is going to come in. And here's an attractive geometry. This is a blood vein, quite appropriately named. You don't need me to tell you why this has got the name blood vein. Also, the wings are edged with a pale sort of reddish pink. Very attractive species. This, obviously, it's a geometrid moth. Regular at light in woodlands. We get this fairly regular at Sherwood Forest and at Egreen, but it was only in 1s and 2s. It's never a species that we ever had in good numbers, and this is the first one that's come in this evening. They rarely tend to settle down at the light or on the sheet, so quite an unusual opportunity for showing you blood vein, but a nice little moth too. Four hours of this session have gone, and where that 4 hours has gone I have no idea whatsoever. But there again, when you've got lots of moths coming in, lots of moths to write down, moths to check, and you're constantly going through the sheet to see if you've missed anything, that's where your time disappears. But staying for a length of time that I have has paid dividends, and paid dividends I think big time, in the form of this very plain straw coloured triangular shaped moth. When this first come in, I immediately thought of pyralid. I looked through the pyralids, couldn't find it, so then I thought Erebidae, and there it was lurking, because I think this is a dotted fanfoot. Now, it's not featured on the website, which in itself is an indicator that something is rare or rarely encountered. And I can't remember seeing a report of dotted fanfoot. I may well have done and completely forgot about it, but I think this is really rare in Nottinghamshire, and it's very much a case of a moth being worth more in rarity value than in beauty. It's very plain, just a straw coloured moth, and apparently there's a couple of rows of fine black dots, but with my eyes, no matter what magnification I stick in front of them, I can't see them. However, I'm 99% certain that that's what this moth is, and it's a wetland species too, and according to the Norfolk Moths website, it's a species which has increased in recent years there. So one to go back home, and this may well be the moth of the night. Well, still plenty of moths on the sheet, plenty of midges as well. They've not been biting midges, so it's been very pleasant, and there's been no mosquitoes. But what a sight it is to see a sheet full of moths, especially this year. This has been a rare sight indeed. I have a plan. The plan is to finish drinking this cup of tea, see if anything else drops in onto the sheet and anything of note or rarity. If it doesn't, then chances are that I will be packing up and then heading home. But the way how this evening's gone, in all likelihood something else could drop in, and something just has actually. In here is a moth that I've never trapped before. I've seen it before, but never trapped one before, and it's a beautiful China mark, and it really is an absolutely beautifully marked moth. So that's going back home to be photographed. And so it all depends what comes in the next sort of 5 or 10 minutes, depending on how long it takes me to drink this. This could well be the first time I've taken an hour or 2 hours to drink a cup of tea. Well, one last look at the sheet. Time to switch the generator off, pack up and head off home. But what a great session it's been here at Besthorpe. What an introduction to this site.